$13.99 versus $19.99, the Lectric XPeak versus the Aventon Aventure 0.2. How do these fat tire e-bikes stack up next to each other? That's what I'm going to cover in this video. I'm going to go through every single detail, talk about frame sizing all the way to motor power and some finer details that you probably haven't even considered if you're looking at both of these e-bikes. So let's get to it. So the format of this video, first we'll talk about all the components. I'll give you a close-up so you can compare them side by side, and then we'll get into some riding footage, a brake test, a hill climb test, and finally really dig into the riding experience in Class 3 mode. One of the biggest considerations, price. What do you get for $600 more? What do you get for $600 less? Of course, prices fluctuate in the e-bike industry, so you can check up-to-date pricing down in the description. There might be some free accessories that are thrown in, maybe even a free battery. And using the links down in the description is a free way for you to say thank you, and I thank you for your support. Costs you nothing. And what better place to start with a fat tire e-bike? Let's talk about the tires. Now, the standard size on a lot of these fat tire e-bikes are 26 by 4 inches wide, so there's no difference in size, but there are some slight differences in brand. On the Lectric XPeak, you get Chow Yang tires. Branding is on this side, some knobby tread for those off-road adventures. Moving to the Aventon Aventure, similar tires, but a different brand, Innova, and even though this bike has over 200 miles on it, this has slightly taller tread than the tread pattern on the Lectric XPeak. The Aventon Aventure just has maybe a little bit more aggressive tread pattern on there. But in all honesty, if you ride both of these fat tire e-bikes, you're not going to be able to tell the difference between these two tires. Moving on to brakes, both bikes have hydraulic disc brakes with 180 millimeter rotors. On the XPeak, we have unbranded hydraulic disc brakes. And on the Aventon Aventure, you have Tektro hydraulic disc brakes. Stay tuned because I put these side by side to see which one stops better. Now the wheels attach in a different way. The Lectric XPeak has a Thru-Axle, which I'll demonstrate, but be sure to check out our full unboxing video if you end up picking up this bike. There's some tips in there that might help you out, but the inclusion of a Thru-Axle helps with easy assembly. That's something that Lectric prioritizes. And so to undo this, simply release the lever, and then there is a notch, which you lock that in place, and then I can simply unscrew this completely toolless. So there you have it. There is the Thru-Axle on the XPeak. And to put it back in, simply line up the holes, put it in place, thread it in, and pull up the release lever. Now that contrasts with the Aventon Aventure. To attach this front wheel and to remove it, say you get a flat, you will need a wrench. So as far as how both wheels attach, my preference going to be the Thru-Axle on the XPeak. A small difference on the XPeak, you have cutouts on the rim, which helps reduce weight just a little bit. We'll talk about weight in just a second. The Aventon Aventure, in comparison, just a solid rim. On the Lectric XPeak, we have plastic fenders both in the front, full coverage in the rear. And on the Aventon Aventure, I will give them points for this. They have metal fenders, but they just look a little bit more sleek. They're Aventon branded as well. And of course, full coverage. That's going to be my preference, though performance-wise, both fenders are going to do the exact same thing. This next one is a big one. It's a component that sets the XPeak out from pretty much any other fat tire e-bike in the affordable category, and that is the RST Renegade front suspension fork. If you were to buy this separately, it's somewhere around $400. So I'm going to push on it so you can get an idea of what you can expect. Feels really nice. There's also a preload adjustment on the left, lockout on the right. Now the Aventon Aventure, while it is branded Aventon here, this is made by Zoom, as indicated right here. They both have 80 millimeters of suspension, and the Aventon Aventure 2 has a lockout on the right, preload adjustment on the left. We see these Zoom suspension forks on lots of bikes. So yes, it is a more affordable component. It still gets the job done, but just doesn't quite stand up to the Lectric XPeak's RST Renegade fork, in my opinion. So I think the Lectric XPeak wins out with its front fork. Now, before we get to some of the electronics, I really want to talk about sizing and options for both of these fat tire e-bikes. So first, capacity, 330 pound total capacity on the XPeak. That's compared to the massive 400 pound capacity on the Aventon Aventure. So the Aventure wins out there. Now, if you're looking for a light e-bike, you're definitely not looking at any fat tire e-bike. These are heavy e-bikes on my bathroom scale. The Lectric XPeak weighed in at 76 pounds and the Aventon Aventure just a tad more, though that was with the front rack installed, which doesn't come with the bike. The Aventon Aventure weighed in at 79 pounds, so both very heavy. You're not gonna notice a significant difference between either of them. Now, both bikes are offered in a high step or a step through. The step through is what you see here today. And the recommended height range on the step through starts at 5'2" on the XPeak. Let's actually measure the standover height to see if there's any difference. Looks like 19 inches on the XPeak step through, and about 19 inches as well on the Aventon Aventure. You do get slightly more room here compared to the XPeak, but the most important thing is you just get your foot over at its lowest possible point. Just makes it that much easier to hop on. We'll put all the height recommendations from each brand on the screen now so you can compare, but you should know as a 6 foot tall rider, I can ride both of these comfortably. And also one thing to note, while Aventon does technically offer different sizes of the Aventon Aventure Point 2, at least on the step through, the only difference is the length of seat posts, so keep that in mind. Otherwise, that would be a significant differentiator between these two e-bikes. Moving on to the XPeak and the head tube, you have their 4-bolt pattern, but unfortunately, Lectric does not recommend using the cargo package, either the front rack with basket or even either basket on the rear rack, since that can cause riders to experience wobbling in the frame, which is a bit of a bummer. Moving to the Aventon Aventure, they also have a 4-bolt pattern, though it's on the side. This is the optional front rack that you can buy. So Aventon wins out here for having the option for front cargo capability. Both bikes have front and rear lights that run off the main battery. This is the Elite headlight that they're currently including on the XPeak, and the rear light is attached to the rear rack. It is not brake actuated. This is the Aventon Aventure front light, more of a narrow focus. But in the rear, you get lights integrated right into the stays, and they are brake actuated. And yes, there's even turn signals. There's the right one. And even with the lights off, they do operate when you pull the brakes. I'll throw up some footage at night to compare both the front lights so you can make a decision which one you think is brighter. Moving to the cockpit, both bikes have hydraulic disc brake levers, of course, both with motor cutoffs, again, unbranded on the Lectric. And moving to the Aventon Aventure, again, Tektro branded. They got a name brand on these. Let's talk about grips. Certainly a small component that's easily replaceable, but you do get ergonomic rubber grips on the XPeak. They are non-locking, so over time they might turn a little bit. Now, as you might have noticed, there are some optional accessories on the Aventon Aventure. My dad, that's whose bike this is, opted to replace the grips with something more ergonomic. But the Aventon Aventure comes with these Aventon branded locking grips. So it's a toss up here. You get locking on the Aventon Aventure, but I think the ones on the XPeak are more comfortable. Moving to the right side, very basic thumb shifter on the XPeak, 7 speeds. And on the Aventon Aventure, we have an 8-speed trigger shifter. That's gonna be my preference. I think the Aventon Aventure wins out there. Let's talk throttles on the XPeak. You get a right-hand thumb throttle. And on the Aventon Aventure, you get a left-hand thumb throttle. So maybe depending on what your dominant hand is or what you're used to, you might have a preference one way or another. They're both pretty similar. Maybe the XPeak is slightly easier to push if you're going to be doing throttle only for long periods of time. All right, let's talk about the controls and the display. This is Lectric's display that they've been using for some time. They now have a color LCD display, which I'm sure will make it on the next generation XPeak. 3 buttons on the left. We have a power button and pedal assist up and down. We'll turn this display on. And I think the biggest thing here, and it probably comes across on camera, this display is large and it's so easy to read. Your speed is front and center. You have 5 levels of pedal assist and additional information as well. But I think one of the unique things with this display is it allows some customizability. Holding pedal assist up and down will get you into these P settings, and there are a few changes that you can make in here depending on your preference. We'll put those on the screen in case you're curious, but let's talk about the Aventon Aventure controls and display. Now for the controls, you have 5 buttons here. Ignore this, this is my dad's bell. And another cool thing with the Aventon Aventure is you get a USB port hidden beneath the display. No USB port on the XPeak. Let's turn this display on, hold the power button in the middle. Aventon on boot up. Now it should be obvious, this is a color LCD display, and sometimes the way the sun hits it, it can be difficult to see. That's especially true if you ride with the lights on all the time because the display goes dim, like I did there by holding pedal assist up. You do have a battery percentage, which I like, miles per hour front and center, and additional information. Now you only get 4 levels of pedal assist here: Eco, Tour, Sport, and Turbo. And of course, there's some advanced functions in here. You can clear your trip data, set the screen brightness, but more importantly, you can connect to the app. This is something that sets the bike apart. Now in the app, there's some gamification, there's a social aspect to it. It displays a lot of the same information that you have on the display as well. However, more importantly, that's where you have to override the top speed to be a class 3 e-bike for speeds up to 28 miles per hour. So I think it's a toss-up on the display, simple to read display with some advanced functions not found on the Aventon Aventure, or color LCD display with some app connectivity, and you also get that USB port, so I don't think I can make a call on the display. Let's talk about the handlebars. Just a slight swoop on the XPeak handlebars. Now, the Aventon Aventure that you see here has an adjustable stem. My dad put that on to get in a more upright riding position. So you do not get that, but you can add it to any e-bike that you'd like. And if you're curious about more accessories, be sure to check out our full accessory video that we did on this bike. But you can see that the handlebars more or less are very similar to the XPeaks. Before we get to the batteries, I wanted to show a little bit of the overall frame. You can see that they're fairly similar as it relates to geometry. There's some more curves obviously going on with the Aventon Aventure, but one thing I did want to point out is the Aventon Aventure just feels a little bit more premium. There's no weld marks around the head tube here. They're all smoothed out. So it feels like a more expensive electric bike. In fact, it is a more expensive e-bike compared to the XPeak. You can just see the weld marks. Now, aesthetics may or may not be important to you, but it's something that I wanted to call out. And by the way, if you're curious about the purchase experience with both of these brands, be sure to check out our Aventon versus Lectric video that we did. I talk more about the purchase experience because one of the main differences is that Lectric is a strictly direct-to-consumer brand compared to Aventon, which has over 1,800 dealers in the United States. Let's talk about the electronics. You should know that both batteries are UL2271 certified. Both bikes' electronics are UL2849, so no differences there, but there is a slight difference between these batteries. Let's talk about the XPeak's battery located beneath the frame here. I'll turn the key and then you push the button to fully remove. This is a 48 volt, 14 amp hour battery, and we'll put it back in. Simply snaps into place onto the Aventon Aventure. Now the biggest difference is the battery on the Aventon Aventure comes out on the side, so I'm going to give them the win here because it's just a little bit more user-friendly, but I'm also going to give them the win because this is a slightly bigger battery at 48 volts, 15 amp hours, but don't worry, both batteries fit in our waterproof and flame-resistant battery bags. It's a roll-top bag. Pick one up for yourself, and why not pick up some other high-quality e-bike accessories at shop.ebikeescape.com and also help support the channel. Thank you so much for your support. Let's put the battery back in. Snaps into place. All right, small thing, we have 3 mounting points on the XPeak here on the down tube, 2 on the seat tube. On the Aventon Aventure, we just have 2 on the down tube here. Let's talk pedals. On the XPeak, you get these quick release pedals, which makes assembly super easy. If I pull here and remove, very easy to take off. I actually take these off pretty frequently when I'm hauling a electric e-bike because it's nice to have the pedals out of the way when you have two bikes on the back of the vehicle. And it's very easy to put them back in. And I will say too, with these pedals, the spikes give you a little bit more grip, though be careful with your shins. Now on the Aventon Aventure, you get simple metal pedals that are found on 99% of e-bikes. So definitely going to give the win to the XPeak with these cool pedals. Let's talk seats. On the Lectric XPeak, you get a more sleek saddle and you get an Aventon branded one on the Aventure. Again, my dad has this set up with his cushy seat, and that is because neither of these seats offer ultimate comfort. So my recommendation is to get a suspension seat post with a comfy seat. We'll leave a link down in the description if you want to check out the ones that I recommend. And we also sell our own suspension seat post, which works on both of these e-bikes. All right, the rear rack on the XPeak has a max payload capacity of 60 pounds. It is also really large. Now, Lectric doesn't really recommend that you put the basket on here because it messes with how the bike can ride. You can get a little bit more wobble. Certainly could add some pannier bags here though. On the Aventon Aventure, you get a 55-pound capacity rack. It looks a little bit more sleek. You can add some panniers here. Not a significant difference. This might depend on your use case. All right, let's talk motor power. We have a 750 watt motor on the XPeak that peaks at 1300 watts. It's also using Lectric's stealth technology. That just means it's a little bit quieter, and I can definitely tell a difference. That's compared to the Aventon Aventure with a 750 watt motor as well, but it's peaking at 1130 watts. That probably doesn't mean a lot to you. We'll put both motors to the test in our upcoming riding footage. For the drivetrain, the XP comes with a Shimano tourney derailleur, an entry-level component offered by Shimano, an 11 to 28 teeth, again 7 speeds. That's compared to the 8 speeds on the Aventon Aventure. A slight step up, they're using Shimano Altus, which is also very common on lots of electric bikes. But the gearing here is 12 to 32 teeth. I'm going to give the win on this one to the Aventon Aventure because it has 8 speeds and it's using a better derailleur. Though if I'm being honest, almost every recreational rider isn't going to notice a difference between these, but you do get 8 speeds, which is nice. For the front chainring on the XPeak, 46 teeth, and it's using a double-sided plastic guard compared to the metal one on the Aventon Aventure, and this is 48 teeth. Both bikes have chainstay protectors. So I just went through a lot of things, but this next one you're going to want to pay attention to because this is a significant difference as it relates to riding experience. The Lectric XPeak comes with a cadence sensor, which means as long as you're spinning your legs, you're going to get power from the motor. Think of it as an on-off switch. But remember, you can still change how much power you get by changing the pedal assist level with those controls up to 5. Cadence sensors are common on more affordable electric bikes, but it compares to a torque sensor, which Aventon has put on all of their models at this point. Now, what a torque sensor does is it measures how much pedal power you're putting in and amplifies it. Again, you still have those 4 levels of pedal assist to tune how much power you're getting to the motor. Both bikes though, however, are class 3 capable, but probably the best way for me to share with you the difference between a cadence sensor and a torque sensor is to get into some first-person riding footage so you can watch it side by side and see how these bikes perform at different pedal assist levels and different speeds. All right, we are on the Lectric XPeak with the cadence sensor. I did change the 8P setting to class 3 mode. You set that from 32 to 100, and that unlocks class 3 mode. Keep in mind with this electric bike, the way it comes shipped, throttle is tied to the pedal assist level. So that means in pedal assist level 1, throttle only, I just get a little bit of power. Check out the P22 setting if you want to change that. But for now, we're going to leave the stock settings. Another feature that the XPeak has that the Aventon Aventure does not have is cruise control. So if I hold the throttle and hold pedal assist down, cruise control is now engaged at about 13 miles an hour. You can see it on the display. And it's going to hold me there until I hit the brakes. I can still pedal, however, So that's kind of a nice feature if you want to travel at a constant speed. All right, let's get into talking about this cadence sensor and how it feels up to 28 miles per hour. And for good measure, I'm going to shift all the way down. We have the GPS speed as well to compare. All right, pedal assist level 1, nice and gentle takeoff. And there is also a different P22 setting, which will change how pedal assist level 1 and 2 feel, because it's going to stop me at about 9 miles an hour in pedal assist level 1. First gear feels pretty good going up this slight hill. Now you can change that so it gives you power no matter what your speed is with that P22 setting. But let's go into pedal assist level 2. So decent jump there. And again, as long as I'm spinning my legs, I'm going to get power from the motor. And right now it's showing 3 amps going to the motor. And again, pedal assist level 1 and 2 are limited. This one stops at 15 miles an hour. Could actually shift down maybe into 4th gear here. All right, let's go into pedal assist level 3. So now we're not being limited on speed. You can see we're going 22 miles an hour. And I'm in 7th gear. And we are just creeping up the speed. 23, the GPS speed doesn't always work here. 24 miles an hour. And again, to best demonstrate this, if I just spin my legs, just like this, providing no effort, I get power from the motor. That is a cadence sensor. That doesn't mean you don't have to provide power. I can certainly provide power. It's just the motor is going to kick on as long as I'm pedaling. Doesn't matter how much pressure I put on my legs. So feeling pretty good at 7th gear, going about 23 miles an hour. Let's go into pedal assist level 4. Getting 17 amps according to the display. We'll take this turn. Already getting about 27 miles an hour. So this is going to be a pretty big different riding experience compared to the Aventon Aventure, which is coming up next. All right, easily cruising at 26, 27 miles an hour. And pedal assist level 5. The gearing is such that I can still provide power. I am not ghost pedaling. Electric display reading 27.9, 27.8. GPS reading slightly below that. There's 28, going down the hill a little bit. So that is the cadence sensor on the Lectric XPeak. Let's talk about the torque sensor on the Aventon Aventure 2. One thing I failed to mention, both bikes have walk mode by holding pedal assist down. That can be helpful if you're trying to move this electric bike. Now the Aventon Aventure throttle, you get full access to the throttle no matter what pedal assist level you're in. So I can be in eco and I can get up to 20 miles per hour. But what I want to talk about is this torque sensor. Now I did have to go into the app, download it, and add this specific bike, scan the QR code, and change the top speed to 28. I will need to turn it back down for my dad though. And I'm going to shift all the way down to 1st gear. All right, here we go. Eco pedal assist. Now I can feel the motor. It's just giving me a little bit of power, and I might shift up to 2nd gear here. And I'm going 7 miles an hour, but if I put in a little bit more power, there we go, 11 miles an hour. That is the big difference with the torque sensor. It can sense when I'm putting more pressure on my legs, and it's going to give me more power. A lot of people equate this to a more natural riding experience. Lectric tries to find a good middle ground with their more current-based system, which means you get a different power level depending on the pedal assist level, but it's still not quite a torque sensor. Let's go ahead and go into tour mode. Let's go up to 3rd gear. And pedaling nice and easy, 10 miles an hour. But if I wanted to go faster, there we go, 16 miles an hour. And when I say more power, certainly I need to put some more in, but it's not a significant amount, at least in these lower pedal assist levels. And remember, you have Eco, Tour, Sport, and Turbo. So a leisurely cadence, 12 miles an hour, certainly doable. And if you wanted to get a little bit more of a workout and travel at higher speeds, let's go up to 5th gear there, 18 miles an hour. So already approaching class 2 speeds in Tour. Let's slow down, let's go to Sport mode and see what we get. Gently just spinning my legs. Most people are going to be able to do this. Cruising at 14 miles an hour and just that little extra effort. 16. Shift up to 6th gear here. Remember, that's of 8, which is nice. Went down the hill, going about 19, but holding me there without too much effort. But again, if you wanted to travel at 20 miles per hour, or even higher than that on the Lectric XPeak, you basically don't have to provide any power if you don't want to. You can spin your legs. All right, Sport mode, 15 miles an hour, very doable. Let's go into Turbo mode because I want to see how much power it takes to get to 28. So in Turbo mode, gentle cadence, 16 miles an hour. Let's shift up to 7th gear there. Aventon display reading 18 miles an hour. Again, GPS sometimes is a little bit wonky here. All right, so now I have to put in some power. Here we go. Putting in a little bit more power. I wouldn't say a ton of power. 22 miles an hour. Let's shift up to 8th gear, highest gear. All right, and you do need to put in a little bit more effort if you want to get all the power. We'll take this turn here. And I want to get to 28. There we go, 28 on the display. I would say I need to put a moderate amount of pressure on my legs. I could still do it for a decent amount of time, but remember, compared to the XPeak, we got up to 28 miles per hour. And I barely had to put any effort in if I didn't want to, of course. So that is the main difference between a cadence sensor and a torque sensor. I'm not going to make a call for you on either of these because it is really a personal preference. There's people that like both. Generally speaking, people who come from a more traditional cycling background like torque sensors. I would imagine a fair amount of people new to e-bikes that just want to go out and have some fun. They might prefer a cadence sensor. It just kind of depends the riding experience that you want. Do you want that push pedal feel where you feel like the bike is just enhancing your effort? Or do you really want to be able to travel at high speeds with relative ease on the XPeak? Let me know down in the comment section. But we're only getting started on our tests. Let's get to the brake test, the hill climb test, and see how these motors stack up. Welcome to the riding portion of our comparison. I have a massive hill to my right. We're going to do a brake test as well as an acceleration test. Both bikes are fully charged so we can see what they're fully capable of. Let's get started. We're going to start the hill climb with the Aventon Aventure because that might be the lower powered one here, at least on paper. 750 watts of sustained power, up to 1,130 watts of peak power, according to the internet. On the other hand, the Lectric at 750 watts, but peaking much higher at 1,310 watts. Does that mean better hill climbing ability? Let's find out. All right, here we go. Throttle only up this hill. It's not going to look that big on the GoPro, but trust me, it's a large hill. We'll put up a picture of this short but steep hill on the screen. And we are cruising at 19 miles an hour, and we'll see what the minimum speed is. It gets really steep towards the top of the hill. Still holding 20 miles an hour. 17, 16, 15. All right, 15 miles an hour minimum speed on the Aventure 2 up this short but steep hill. Let's go back down and see how the XPeak does. All right, here we go on the XPeak. GPS again. We'll get up to speed, and in theory, this should do better, but we'll see. Holding us at 19 miles an hour according to the GPS. Electric display reading 19.6. Holding us there pretty nicely. There's 18. $17, $16. All right, looks like 16 miles an hour was the minimum speed on the XPeak. So both very powerful hill climbing performance, but I think you're going to eke out just a little bit more power on the XPeak due to the higher peak output. Let's get to the brake test. So next, both of these bikes have hydraulic disc brakes, but let's see if there's any difference. More for fun. I know personally that they stop both fine. I have a line. That's going to be my stopping line, and then we have chalk to mark where each bike stops, and I'll do it 3 times for each bike for good measure. And getting up to 20 miles an hour each time. All right, let's mark the line. And for full disclosure, the Aventon Aventure has over 200 miles on it, whereas the XPeak is brand new, but I will bed in those brakes before we do the test. All right, the first line on the Aventon Aventure. All right, we have the 3 Aventon Aventure lines. Let's see how the XPeak does. Oh, it's so close. Not as good that time around. I think we can toss out the 3rd stop on the XPeak. Based off of these lines, I call this inconclusive. And to be honest, I really thought that the Tektro brakes would have performed a little bit better on the Aventon Aventure just because they're name brand. But these unbranded Lectric XPeak brakes actually perform just as well. With that, let's get into some acceleration tests, 0 to 20, and see which one accelerates faster. All right, acceleration test. We'll see which one of these accelerates faster from a stop on throttle only. All right, 3, 2, 1, throttle only. All right, we are going to do 0 to 20 and see how long that takes me from hitting the throttle. Here we go, 3, 2, 1, throttle only. 4, 9, 13, 15, 18, and there's 20. All right, here we go, throttle only, 0 to 20 time test. 3, 2, 1, here we go. 9, 13, 16, 18, and there's 19, 20. Remember, if you're planning to purchase either of these Fat Tire electric bikes, why not also support the channel for free by using our link down in the description. Thank you so much for your support. I want to know your pick. Would you go with the XPeak or the Aventon Aventure? The goal of this video was to give you a comprehensive look at 2 of the most popular Fat Tire electric bikes on the market. I hope that was accomplished. Let us know in the comment section if you want to see more comparisons, or if this video does well. Obviously, we'll do more of them, so give it a like and subscribe if you're new here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.